Hey, Taco here. Just another pilot debrief from what was my 10th flight. And you can see this is a POV from my GoPro helmet, which is why it looks a little weird. The camera is mounted on top of my head, so you see exactly the direction that I'm looking at. And this is after my first blown takeoff. So I get out there, the wind is almost nothing, and I tried to take off, got my glider about halfway up, and then it just piddled back down to the ground. And so what I did was I followed some advice that I had been given by the internet at large and let my trims out. Now this is a BGD Magic motor in size large, and it doesn't have a very big trim range, but I did let the trims out maybe about 1.5 inches. So maybe about halfway from fully in, and it actually worked really well. When you'll see it come up here in a minute when I take off running, and it actually worked surprisingly well. So much so that when it did come up overhead, I had to check the surge a good bit. It almost overflew me, which was real surprising. It also led to a shallower takeoff angle than I'm used to, and I was actually really kind of worried about clearing the trees just past the fence. I've got what little wind there is across the runway there, or across the grass strip, directly in the direction I'm running, and you'll see the glider come up and almost overfly me. So I had to give it a good bit of gas, and then last time I took off crossways, I got over this taxiway, and I was a lot higher than this point. At this, it really was kind of a sketchy looking takeoff at the angle I was at. So my first inclination after launch is to stow the brake and get those trims pulled in, because I've got to get a little bit more lift out of the glider, so I can gain altitude faster. So that was my first thing. Like, hey, let's get these trims pulled back in. I don't need to fly along with the trims out like they are. And originally, when I showed up to the airfield, right at sunrise, it was foggy. There was a layer of fog overhead that just didn't seem to want to go away. So I kind of messed around at the airport, looked over my stuff real good, practiced hand kiting a little bit, waiting to see what the fog was going to do. And then all of a sudden, right about maybe 8:45 or so, the fog just like disappeared. I had everything set up. I tried to do one launch and blew it. Reset, and then you could see the sky is almost completely clear. I mean, there's a few wispy patches that I'll go through. I'm checking my Garmin Fenix 7 with Stewfly. I use an app called Stewfly. And I need to check for what reason it keeps getting set back on meters. So I'm 300 meters up, and I don't know what that means. So it's about 1,000 feet, which is pattern altitude for this airport that I'm at. The FBO manager told me, hey, look, stick with the same pattern altitude that the general aviation uses, so they know what to look for and where to expect you to be in the sky. But honestly, 1,000 feet around this airport is a little bit high. Now, I do like the fact that at 1,000 feet, I'm going to be, if my motor quit, I got a lot of options. Because you see, if I was at 500 feet, there's a lot of trees below me with not a lot of land. There's a field right there to the right, but there's so many trees right around this airport. Once you get out away from it, it becomes farmland. But right at the airport, there's a lot of trees. And then now I'm just kind of chilling out. You can see me checking my wrist altimeter thing several times. There's my Insta360. That's a good view of the Insta360 on my swing arm. So I got a I have another Insta360. That's the X4. I have the X3, and I've got its little selfie stick, and I've figured out a way to run a shock cord to the back end of it. That'll be coming up on a future video. But I'm going to run a shock cord on the end of it, and then I can tie it off. But I can stick it on my leg. So I'll get one of those views where I'm out away from the paramotor, looking back at myself. So I've liked so far the fact that I can just set it and forget it. So that Insta360 I don't have to touch. The GoPro on my head I don't have to touch. So now I'm going to swing around and come back towards the airport. Remember, I didn't take off until almost 9 o'clock. So it's getting, it's a couple hours after sunrise. It's a little thermal. Oh, there's the moon. You can see that spot of white is the moon setting. There's a new solar farm off the direction I'm flying. Airport's, of course, right there back to the right. And then the nuclear plant sits across the lake. And you can still see a few wispy clouds over where the water is. Fog still burning off. But now I'm headed back to the airport. But at the same time, I'm not really looking to land yet. What I'm looking to do is just kind of do a practice run along over the airport. Just trying to hold altitude at a lower altitude. Just kind of holding steady. And I'm going to play with a combination of power and brake as I come over the airport. I intended to actually get lower than I do on my flyby. Maybe half as low as I was. Or half again as low as I was. So, still like right above tree line, but low enough down I could, try to maintain my altitude. And just kind of fly straight and level. So that's what I was trying to do. From 1,000 feet, though, coming down to this runway, I idled a good bit, and I still didn't get as low as I thought I was going to. I was a little bit timid, too, because I've had problems coming into the runway from this direction before with rotor off the tree, specifically with a crosswind coming from my right, which it's doing today. So I didn't want to get too low and then feel like I'm being forced down to land, because that's happened to me before where on this end of the runway, you get too close to that tree line with a crosswind from the right, and it almost feels like it pushes you into the ground. So I didn't want to do that. So there's a little bit of that wispy fog left over. I didn't even see that in person. I was concentrating on the runway. I didn't even see that fog in person until I got this nice recording of it. So it's blowing me a little bit to the left. I'm fighting a little bit of oscillation. In the original video, you hear me, hey, don't fight the oscillation, hands up. Just let it do its thing. Let the glider do its thing. And then I'm sort of constantly telling myself what to do. Now, I don't want you to think that this is any form of instruction. When I'm talking on my camera as I'm flying around, I'm not instructing other people. I'm really kind of talking myself through everything. So when I'm like, hey, check your center, brakes clear to pulley, all that kind of stuff, I'm not talking to you guys from YouTube, especially newbies like me or people that are new into the sport. I'm not talking to you trying to teach you anything. I'm talking myself through it. So I talk to myself a lot in third person, or as if I'm talking to an actual, like another person. So I do that quite a good bit when I'm working through problems. It's sort of the way my mind works to help me work problems out. So you can see I am getting a little bit of oscillation back and forth, which is making me a little bit uncomfortable. And at one point I said, you know what, I could land if I wanted to, but I didn't want to land. I wanted to go around again. But it was getting to the point where I knew I probably had just one more go around, and then the thermals would be kicking off so much that it wasn't going to be fun anymore. So I wanted to do one nice pass along the runway. And I did fix my comms, so there was nobody else flying. As I was getting ready to take off, a Moonie came in and landed. So you don't see that, but before I blow my first takeoff, a Moonie comes in and lands. And then a student a student pilot took off and went the other way. So once the Mooney was down and once the student pilot had taken off, there was no other activity at the airport, like the whole time I was there. And the Mooney guy was actually waiting for, I think, another student. And so until I landed, there were no planes flying. I love early Saturday and early Sunday mornings at this airport, because, especially Sunday, because nobody's there. It's the South. So many people are in church. Like, I come out first thing Sunday morning and like the airport is all mine. I feel like the whole place is just me. So that's about, I wanted to get, like maybe half again this low. And you really can't see it on the GoPro, but it feels pretty low to me. This is maybe 200 feet, 250. I'd have to go back to the telemetry and look, but I think I'm about 250 feet off the ground. But I wanted to be a little bit closer. I'll give it another try later. And so now I'm going to go around again. And at this point, I was oscillating a little bit. It's getting bumpy. So I'm like, I'm just going to do a short swing around, not all the way up to 1,000 feet, but a nice short swing back around to the end of the runway. Checking my watch, wrist altimeter, looking at the time. So I was feeling really good about this flight, even though it was later than I thought. I wanted to get up at the crack of dawn, take off just before actual sunrise with the strobe on, and get above the fog layer and watch the sun come up. That was my original goal. But it was a lot foggier than I thought it was going to be. From my house, it didn't look so bad. I get to the airport and it was completely socked in. If you've seen some of my other video on either Instagram or YouTube, where I show the fog bow that I saw that morning. The fog bow was just amazing. And never seen anything like it. It's like a white rainbow. But it was so foggy. I was scared I was going to take off and then the fog was going to roll in, and then if I had a problem, I wouldn't be able to see where to land. We're not really supposed to be up in clouds, of course. That's against the rules. But if a hole opened up right above the airport and I could get up above it, I would be okay, depending on, how far away I am from clouds, above, below, and all, side to side. So if a big enough hole opened up, I could take off through it. But then, let's say you get up to 700 feet and your engine quits, and that hole over the airport's closed up. Where do you go? So it's kind of dangerous to be above a fog layer, especially one that's thick enough where you can't see where to land. And you come down through the fog and you wind up in those trees, or you wind up in the lake. So it happens to aviators every now and then. So here I'm a little bit below pattern altitude. I didn't go all the way up to 1,000 feet. I think I got up to maybe 700 or so. Again, I was making radio calls, and I didn't hear anybody else. That Mooney was still sitting by the fuel pumps. So now I'm just kind of enjoying yet another circuit around the airport, about 9:15 or so, and intending on cutting it a little bit closer at the end so I can get back down. Really felt good about this launch, besides it being a little bit sketchy, having to go directly across the strip and the taxiway. But I really felt good because the last time I came out on a 0 wind day, I tried 5 times and could not get that glider up over my head consistently. This time with the trims out, thank you, Internet. This time with the trims out, I was able to get the thing inflated and take off, and it felt really good. Like, another, a little notch on my pilot tool belt here. And I don't have my hands on the toggle there. I think I'm messing with the radio, just making sure that people know that I'm there. Now, I know this is an uncontrolled airport, so for those of you who are not in the know, at an uncontrolled airport, you do not have to have a radio. However, to keep in good graces with our airport, or, our local FBO, basically he's like, hey, you need to have a radio. You need to at least be able to listen to actual general aviation airplanes. And talking would be even better, but you need to at least listen so you know where they are. It's our responsibility to see and avoid them as ultralight pilots, but being able to talk to them also has some advantages. In a previous video, there's I'm flying the pattern, and there's a Citabria doing a tail dragger training with a student. And the Citabria, we're both in the pattern together, and we're talking to each other. And they were so nice. He's like, "Hey, I'll extend my downwind so you can land and get out the way." And so it's really nice to be able to talk back and forth to real pilots, I guess you could say, or general aviation pilots. So they know where you are and you know where they are, and everybody knows what everybody's doing. I mean, it's just so much safer. And why not? It's a great airport. Why not support them and do what they ask so we can keep using it and they won't fight against us? So at this point, yeah, it's getting a little bumpy, and I'm kind of ready to get down. And I'm flying my sort of my 747 glide scope here, like I usually do. I usually come in a little bit low, but a little bit long. Thankfully, by this time, and you couldn't see it, but I could as I flew over. Thankfully, by this time, the wind has shifted, and it's coming instead of across the taxiway and grass strip from the right. The wind is actually coming almost straight down the grass strip. So that windsock I made from an extendable fishing pole and some Mylar bird stuff, that fishing pole windsock works amazingly well, and I can see it 800 feet up in the air. So I'm getting ready to land. I got my feet out, and I've got my shoulder straps and my seat straps loose. So when I slide out the seat here in a minute, you'll be able to, I'm not sure how much you can see because it's the GoPro, but I'll slide out the seat and kind of lean forward, like in a running or a sprinting position. That's been one of my fail points up until now, is not actually getting out of the seat enough and leaning forward in a no-wind situation. If you've got a good amount of wind coming from in front of you, it can hide a lot of your sins. Because the glider, you'll touch down and the glider will keep you standing up. But in no wind, as soon as you touch down, you got issues if you're not in proper posture. So here we come for a landing, and I'm out of the seat. My motor's been cut off. We always land with a dead motor, if we remember. And just a nice touchdown. My ankles didn't hurt. And then one of the things I forgot to do was keep running. So when I hit the ground, I should have been at full brake, all the way under me, and just keep running to get the glider behind me. I think what I did in retrospect, I think I hit the ground and took like 4 steps and just quit. And then the glider's inertia carried it over my head and then down onto the ground. So not the prettiest landing. I'm on my feet. I didn't bend anything. I didn't sit. But as far as where the glider wound up, not the prettiest. But hey, I was happy with it. I got to fly. I got to do 2 circuits. I got to do some landing practice. And it just felt good. So remember, don't go splat. See you next time.